I'm June A. Dawson. The A isn't important. It's a family name. I really never use it.
Except on official documents, right?
Except on a few things like driver's licenses and things where I more or less have to.
What is the A? What's the A for?
It's a family name.
Okay.
You want it?
Yeah, sure.
It's spelled A-T-T-E. It's French. It's a T.
Oh, that's interesting, June. I never knew that, see?
No one else does either.
Yeah, and that's the first question. Yeah. Any nicknames growing up?
Not really, no. My name was kind of too short for a nickname.
Yeah, yeah. What's your present family situation, June? Where are you living by yourself at this point? Are you?
Yes, I am. I'm still living in the same house I've owned for about 20 years. Yeah, I'm still there, yes.
Okay. Where's that? That's not in Brentwood,
Holbrook.
is it? It's in Holbrook. You come from a small family or a large family?
No, there were 5 of us, and I was the oldest. So it's a reasonably large family.
Would you say that being the oldest, you have the traits of the older child? There's a lot of work been done on
What
that.
I've read, I think I do, yes.
Yeah. Like,
Yes.
for example, how would you describe your personality?
How would I describe my personality? Well, I can be a take-charge person if I have to. I did spend a lot of time, because we were kind of spread out in children and working with them. I'm not afraid to go out and do things on my own and do different things I want to do. If I decide I want to do something, I will work towards doing it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of a thing.
Responsible, I'll bet, too.
Yes, yes.
Where were you born?
Oyster Bay.
Oh.
And then when I was in first grade, we moved to Bayville.
In the village of Oyster Bay?
Yes, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
My father and his whole family was born there, yes.
Okay. Oh. Tell me about your siblings. Who are they? Who's next in line?
Okay,
Where
next
do
in
they
line
live?
is my sister. She now lives in Wading River, but they're all scattered around Long Island except my one brother. The next one is my brother. He's in West Babylon.
What's his name?
His name is Albert. He works for Agreement Peterson. It's an engineering firm.
And the first?
My sister?
The sister.
My sister works for a lawyer. She's a secretary, yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And my other brother's in Florida.
And his name is?
His name is Walter. He's a contractor down there.
Ah.
And then my younger sister is Jenny. She lives in Oakdale. She works at the AHRC.
So you have family relatively close to you.
Oh, yes, my mother's still alive. She's well into her 80s, but she's still in Babylon. So I have aunts and uncles and cousins all over the island, yes.
Tell me about, you mentioned your father family comes from Oyster Bay.
That's correct,
Bayville
yes. Yes.
area. I suspect, does that go back a previous generation?
Well, my grandfather and grandmother came over from England, and they settled in Oyster Bay, and they stayed there.
When did they arrive?
Oh, let me
Turn of the
think.
century or before?
I would have to say in the maybe early 1900s. I would say 1910 or before.
Mm.
And I still have relatives. Most of them are in that general area. Yes.
In the
Oyster
North
Bay.
Shore, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That area. Bayville, East Norwich.
Do you have
that
any
general.
connection with the relatives from England?
No.
That's been severed, huh?
More or less.
Yeah.
After the war, everyone kind of lost track of them.
Yes.
Plus, my grandfather was one of the youngest, and so was my grandmother. So
Now we're talking about your father's side of the
my
family.
father's son, yes. My mother's from the city, yes.
Is from where?
My mother's from the Bronx.
Oh, from the Bronx.
Yeah.
What part of the Bronx?
Near the Bronx Zoo, believe it or not.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Do you have any memories of family from that part? I mean, that.
Oh, yes. I used to love to go in there and have my grandparents take me to the zoo and take me to the Bronx Botanical Gardens and that general area, yes.
Bronx.
Yes.
The Bronx was a different place then, though, Jean.
Most definitely.
What are some of the earliest memories you have of your own childhood?
I remember my first day of school. I probably remember earlier than that. My first day of kindergarten, I climbed a slide, which I thought was huge, and it was in the classroom. And I came down the fast way right over the side. That I never forgot. That sticks out more than anything I ever remember about early school, let's put it that way.
I I have a similar memory of first day of school. What about, you mentioned your grandparents. Do you have memories associated with the time you spent with them in the Bronx or?
Yes, I used to go in and spend a week or two in the summer and things like that. And they always took me around, to the zoo and to
But that was
the
country.
beach.
The Bronx was like the country.
It was, yes. It was definitely at that point. And I used to stay with my grandmother in Oyster Bay, too. A few days. When I went to high school, because we were bused in, because we were in Bayville at that time, if I wanted to stay after school, there was no buses home. I'd walk to her house and my father'd pick me up. I'd have dinner at her house and then go back home,
Tell me about your father, his personality. What kind of a guy was he?
What kind of a guy was he? Very likable person. Everyone seemed to like him.
Mm-hmm.
He was the oldest boy. He wasn't the oldest, in himself.
Mm-hmm.
He was very close with his family. He really was. And it worked out very well. It really did.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all my friends loved him.
Yeah, that's a nice thing to be able to say. You were the oldest, but I'll bet you learned things from your brothers and sisters, though. I mean, generally, we watch one another and we learn.
Oh, yes, yes.
Can you mention one thing that you think you picked up from one of your brothers or sisters along the road? You lived together for a good many years.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. One thing I learned, I probably learned a lot more than one.
Yes, sure. Well, I'm just asking if you can think of one thing.
One thing I learned from my brothers, a lot of things about art and painting and that. I'm not very good at that, but they were, my one brother in particular. So I really learned a lot, from that.
How would you describe growing up in your family? What was it like? Give us an idea. Let us take a little look in to see what it was like.
Oh, I think it was kind of an ordinary family.
Okay.
My mother was home, of course.
Yes.
She was there when you came home from school. She was always there. She didn't drive. My father did, took us different places when he was home.
Mm-hmm.
We generally took a vacation in the summer,
Oh.
camping or something else, for 4 or 5 days or a week. And I learned a lot about camping, and that I learned from my father and my brothers,
Yes.
And, I think it was kind of average,
Mm-hmm.
family.
Were there other adult influences, apart from your parents and your grandparents now? Were there other adult influences that you would, looking back, say had a profound impact upon forming your early personality?
I don't think so.
Okay.
That I can really recall. There probably were, if I think
Okay.
about it a little bit.
And now, out of the blue, how did come you decided to be a teacher? Was that decision made early on, or was that something that evolved?
Well, I was always very good in school, and it's something I always wanted to do. However, the other thing...
Always meaning like when you were young?
Oh, I was 10, 12 years old.
Okay.
I pretty well wanted it. The other thing I was always interested in was science, and I had kind of said, well, maybe I'll study science, maybe I'll be a teacher. So I sort of combined them both, and it worked out very well for me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you remember any of your school chums, either elementary or high school? Do you remember any of the people that you hung out with?
Oh, yeah, I remember them, yeah.
You still have any of those contacts?
Just one or two.
Uh-huh.
Just one or two, yeah.
What do you remember where you slept as a child? Remember the room you slept in?
Oh, yes.
Can you describe it?
Well, I shared a room with my sister.
Until you were how old?
What?
Until you were how old?
Well, until we moved, and I was already in college at that point. So I pretty well shared a room with her,
Mm-hmm.
My whole time. My sister was a senior in high school when we graduated. I had finished my first year of college, and that's when we moved. And I remember the room. It was blue, which is one of my favorite colors.
Mm-hmm.
We each had our own bureau, our own side of the room, more or less, and,
Mm-hmm.
our own beds and that. And that's just the way it was in those days.
Did you have family chores, June, that you were responsible for doing? Did each youngster or have a
yes.
particular thing?
They were assigned, yes. My sister and I kind of alternated, like I washed the dishes, she dried. Next week it was reversed, and we did a lot of that kind of thing.
Yes.
And my brothers also alternated,
What about the first job you ever had that you were paid for? Do you remember what that was?
I was waitressing.
In town?
Yes, in Bayville, yes.
Is the place still there?
Yeah, it's Walls Beach. It's still there.
Ah, yeah.
It's been there a long time.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
Was there a family holiday in particular that was more important than other holidays for you guys?
I think Christmas was always the number one holiday. At least it's the one that us kids always look forward to.
And was it Christmas Day or Christmas Eve that was the biggie?
It was Christmas Day was the big one.
Yeah.
Yes, Christmas Day was the big one.
What did you do on an average summer day when you were not in school and you were home?
Well, my love of the water was way back then. There was our house and then a road, like a dirt road, and then the beach at the end of the street. So I kind of stayed the whole time at the beach. My friends, the same thing. We were at the beach. April 1st, we used to sneak in the water behind our parents' back to get in. And we spent the summer down there, of course. And as you got older, you'd sit at the beach, you put on 2 inches of lipstick as you got older, you know. But even as a kid, you know, I was always there. My friends were always down there. My family was always at the beach, you know. And I've never really gotten away from the beach even now.
Are you close to the water now?
I don't live close to the water, no, but I scuba dive as often as possible, so I am still in the water. Yeah.
Are you? Would you consider yourself a morning person or a night person?
I used to be basically a night person, okay, because I really didn't fall asleep till after midnight. Now, because of school, I was always getting up anyway, but now I still get up. I'm still up at like 6:37, and I still don't fall asleep until later. So I don't know, a little bit of both.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if you have a favorite season of the year.
Well, I like the summer because I can go in the water.
Yeah. Yes, sure. But yet you choose to remain up north. So many of our colleagues have gone elsewhere.
Well, my family's here.
Yes.
I think that's a good part of it.
Yes.
I don't know if 10 years from now I'll be up here, let's put it that way.
Mm. June, are there certain aromas that grab you, that transport you back to another time and place, certain smells, certain aromas that trigger memories for you?
Well, one of my favorite is apple pie. That transports me way, way, way back, yes.
Would that be back to Grandma's time or
my grandmother, my father, my mother. Apple pie that's the thing that gets me.
Yes.
Yeah.
As American as.
Yeah, that definitely does.
Where was that first school that you remember attending?
Well, I went to kindergarten in Oyster Bay, which was a K through 12 school. But we had moved to Bayville in the first grade. But
now, when you
Bayville didn't have its own high school, so we were bused back to Oyster Bay for that as a central school district.
So you're saying you went to a school that was not one room, but it was all grades, K through 12 in the same school?
In the same, oh yeah.
Did you share a classroom with other grade levels?
No.
But it was just, okay.
It was like one kindergarten, one first grade, one second grade.
Oh, okay. All right.
The high school was bigger because people from Bayville, Mill Neck were brought in. Mm-hmm. You know, my graduating class was only about 120 people.
You said you were in touch with a couple of those people still?
Yeah, one or two, through my cousin, yeah.
Tell me about the other schools that you attended then. Like what came next and next and next after that?
Well, after kindergarten, we moved to Bayville. Mm-hmm. That was the middle of first grade, and that was a K to 8 school. And again, one grade, about 22, 23 kids in each grade. Up to the 8th grade, and then you went back to Oyster Bay High School.
Did the schools bear the names of the communities? Like,
yes.
Was it Oyster Bay, Bayville?
Bayville Grammar School, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then you graduated from Oyster Bay
High School, yeah.
And you decided to go on to higher education.
Yeah,
Who influenced that choice to go ahead with your education?
I just always wanted to.
You made the decision, yeah.
Yeah, I always liked school.
Okay.
Not everybody does, but I did.
And so what did you choose as a school? Where did you go?
Well, I was kind of lucky. I wasn't exactly sure, but then they were going to build Stony Brook. But they opened it in Oyster Bay on Coes Estate. And it was between my house and my high school. It was very convenient. That's where I went.
Oh, it was on the Coes Estate until they finished building? Until they finished building Stony Brook?
Yes, it was there for, I would say, about 5 years. I graduated actually out of what's called Long Island Center in Oyster Bay, which was Stony Brook. And there was one more graduating class, and then I think they were at out in Stony Brook, yes.
Oh. Now, by the time when you finished your undergraduate work, were there a couple of years in between finishing your graduate, or did you go right straight through?
No, I went right straight through. I went to Hofstra, yes.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Actually, I had a degree in biology when I first graduated, and I had some student teaching. So I got a master's in secondary ed right away.
I see.
Yeah.
Were you a commuting student then to Hofstra, or did you live on?
Yes.
Most people, I guess, did back then.
Oh, yeah.
Commuted to Hofstra. Do you remember any of your teachers from those early years, or even let's say, do you remember any of your teachers?
High school and everything like. Oh yes, definitely.
Me too. Did you stay in touch with any of them?
No, not really. Not really.
Who
Some
made-
of the same teachers that had me also had my father. So.
Really?
Oh yes.
Okay.
You know.
Which one of those people that you're thinking of now had what you would consider the greatest impact on you?
My chemistry teacher had a lot of impact on me. Yes. She had me, my father, and my father's aunt. Okay. And my biology teacher, who was a young teacher at the time, had a lot of influence on me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's name those teachers so that wherever they are, at least we can...
Mrs. Zexer was the chemistry teacher. She's no longer alive. She was probably in her 60s when I had her. And the biology teacher was Mr. Kumar. And I know he went into guidance in another school district, and I haven't seen him in a lot of years.
Well, thank you, folks, wherever you are. You
Definitely.
did a good job.
Those are the people who
Yes.
really had an influence on me.
What were your least favorite subjects in school?
English. Definitely English. I find it boring, among other things.
When did you come to Brentwood, June? And why Brentwood? How did you hear about openings here at the time?
Well, I wanted something local, okay, because I was living at home and commuting, and Brentwood was advertising for teachers, so I went and had an interview with Mike DeBellis, if you remember Mike DeBellis.
I certainly do.
And that's where I got hired, yes, South Junior High.
Was he the only person doing the interviewing? Was there anyone else present?
He interviewed me, and then the second time he had what's called the GIS, General Instructional
Supervisor.
Supervisor. And that was not Warren Swenson, but one of the older Swensons. And I don't remember his name right now, but it's an elder brother, yes.
Okay. What year would that have been?
61.
Ah. All right, so you were told that you had the job. By the way, do you remember any questions or any situations during the interview that
I remember
you can tell us
one
about?
question, because it threw me. And he said to me, is teaching an art or a science? I went, I don't really know. I haven't done that much. I really had no idea, you know. But that's the one question that stuck in my mind. Because the next year I started my business. I said, by the way, what answer did you want for that question? Now that you've been here a year or two.
Yes.
And he says, it didn't matter. I just wanted to hear you talk.
Yeah.
But I really thought I did something wrong.
Did you have a first impression of Brentwood that was consistent with the Brentwood that you came to know, or did you have a first impression that was different from the way you found Brentwood to be?
I really didn't have an impression before I got here, let's put it that way.
Had you heard anything about the community or about the district?
Other than it was a growing, fairly new district. I know the junior high had just opened. It was the only one. It was that kind of thing. Beyond that, I really didn't know very much, no. Because, again, my emphasis was more in the other direction into Nassau County. I really didn't know anyone that lived or worked in this area.
Right.
So I didn't have any preconceived notions when I started, no.
If I remember, the Long Island Expressway had just been built, right? At that time, did you travel the expressway to come to work in those days?
No, because we were living in Babylon. I came in Southern State.
That's right, Babylon. I forgot you had moved, yeah.
You came in by way of Southern State,
Sure.
but it didn't go as far as it went now.
No.
Right. No. It went as far as Bay Shore, and then it stopped, which was fine.
Who were the people, outside of Mike DeBellis, who were the people you worked with when you first got here?
Ralph Schneider, for example, taught science in the same building. So did his wife, Sally. Bob Farina was there. Hiawatha Harris. I think you've interviewed him.
I wish I
He
had.
was there. He wasn't there too much longer, but he was there, yes.
Yeah.
Gilda Manton was there. A lot of people, most of them are already retired and out, but, those are the people, you remember.
But these were the founding mothers and fathers, more or less, of our organizations, of our unions, of our
definitely,
and
definitely
of the experience of teaching in Brentwood. These were the people who laid the foundation.
Yeah.
But so did you, June. You were there. You were part of that.
I just started just right after they did.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. There was someone else I remember. He was in English. Charlie
Ed,
Gray.
Oh, I was going to say Ed Polefchik was
him also. I know
Yeah.
Ed Polefchik. Yes.
Yeah.
George Pittman was there too.
Okay. Horn.
Roy Horn was
Horn.
there. Yes, he was there before me, I believe. Yeah, he was there.
Now, the period we're talking about, which is 61 and thereabouts, you were not yet finished with your graduate work, but you were certified to teach
Provisions, yes, biology, general science.
biology
yes.
and general science.
Yeah.
And that would have been at the middle school or junior high school level.
I was high school certified too. Yeah.
And you were high school certified.
Yes.
Now,
In fact, I was high school certified. It was the middle school I wasn't completely
I see.
certified in because I didn't take the earth science. That's the first thing I had to catch when I started with the general science.
So I suspect then you were interviewed for a position at the high school, and then no,
No, I was
you,
interviewed
you
in
knew
the
what
junior
you were.
high. Yeah.
Okay. What were some of the next certifications that you went after in the intervening years, and other positions that you might have held?
Okay, well, I took a test to certify me in health, okay, because they were doing some half-year health, half-year biology in the junior high. And it was recommended I take it. I took it more or less on a lark and passed it, so technically I'm a certified health teacher.
Oh, okay.
Along with the biology, the general science, and that. And then I went to CCNY and I got the administrative supervision certifications, yes.
Uh-huh. Did you pick up any other assignments along the way, like with activities or programs or clubs, or were you involved with students outside the classroom?
I did a lot of involvement, especially in the junior high. I was yearbook advisor for quite a few years. That kept us very busy.
Now, there's a thankless job.
Not always. It's not thankless because the kids really enjoyed it. You know what I
Okay.
mean? I had that. I did work for student council down there. So I was involved in a lot of that kind of thing.
When I say thankless, I should, by way of explanation, add
They didn't pay you then, you're right.
that they never commensurate with the amount of time that went into
No,
it.
but it was an unpaid job even then. That was not part of the contract or anything.
Okay.
So it was a volunteer thing. Like I said, just working with the kids was great.
Yes.
We had most of the kids we kept for 3 years, 7, 8, and 9. They stayed with us.
Mm-hmm. Did your training that you received both as an undergraduate and a graduate student at Hofstra, do you think it prepared you for what you faced when you came to Brentwood?
No, because I never went to a junior high. I went to a K-8 and right to a high school. So the type of thing in a middle school of 7th and 8th graders was totally foreign to me.
Why do you say that?
Well, for example, they changed classes. You didn't when I was in 7th and 8th grade, You didn't until you got to high school, so you had that. We didn't have a separate science teacher, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 8th grade, you were just older than 4th grade. And it was more the workbook kind of thing. It wasn't the kind of thing, that you have now.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have a real laboratory you were in and that kind of thing. You were in a classroom that's a regular classroom. So it was different, but it was better to have that type of a classroom. You know what I mean?
Yes. Each of the jobs and teaching assignments you had their own definition. Even as a classroom teacher, your job is clearly defined. But that doesn't take into account how you, June Dawson, defined her purpose in the classroom. How, looking back, how would you have defined the reason you were a teacher for so many years? What was your purpose?
Well, personally, because I enjoyed it, I got a lot out of it. But in terms of other things, I think I thought my purpose was to work with the very young teenagers. I mean, they were mostly with 7th grade. They were like 11 or 12. And it was very nice to work with them and to see them grow up, and chat out their lives to become, older and better teenagers. I mean, you did a lot of work, especially when you had the same kids after school, and things like that.
Did the contact end once they moved on to the high school, or did people come back to see you?
Oh, a lot of them used to come down.
Yeah.
A lot of them did, yes.
I'll bet particularly the people on the yearbook.
Yes, in fact, the first year I was at the high school, because we were in double session, I used to go down there in the morning and help the other advisor,
Nice.
The first year or so,
Yeah.
So I think I missed it too.
Now, I know that you have contact with former colleagues because you have another involvement, which we'll get to in a few minutes. But when you first retired, did you maintain contact with people that you used to work with? Do you now, in fact, maintain contact with
Yes, I do.
people?
I still do. I mean, I still once in a while go to lunch with some of the people who are still teaching here or at the 9th grade center. So, I do see them. I'm doing the home teaching.
Oh, you are?
For Ross Sonling and the center. The biology, the general science. So I come in here and, I have to pick up work from the teachers. So I really sort of stay with my little hand in it.
I see that.
Even
That's
today.
great.
Yes,
Okay.
that's why you sometimes see me at the high school.
That's
yes.
terrific. Now, you were a member of BTA from practically as soon as you got here, I guess.
Definitely.
For those people who may be watching this and don't have any idea of the origins of the organization in Brentwood and how we have evolved, maybe you can paint a little bit of a picture from your experience of the way it was and how it evolved.
Well, I remember going my first year. I became a delegate probably by my second year. But what happened is we had administrators in the union also. We had central administration in there. We had everybody in there. It was a totally different feeling, okay?
Now, June, was it a union then, or was it just a professional organization?
It was a
back then?
professional organization. It was not a union.
It was not a union yet. Okay.
It definitely wasn't. There was no class size in the contract. The things you would normally expect now did not exist then. It was professional. That was about it. It wasn't into unionism. It wasn't into a lot of these things.
Mm. And some of the people who you mentioned before were at that point, I suspect, active with you. Hiawatha Harris and who else? We mentioned Roy Horn and
I know. And Bob Farina was president
Bob
twice while I was there.
okay.
If you interviewed Marge Jones, she was vice president.
Marge Jones, yes.
Yes, and I mean, these are the people, in fact, Marge taught across the hall from me. She's one of the ones that helped me a tremendous amount my first year or two.
Where did you meet when you had meetings? Did you meet at Central? Did you meet?
Yes, we met in the cafeteria at South Junior High, yeah.
Okay.
Which is basically where you still are, I think.
Yes.
Yes, right.
Interesting. So it's been there all along. That's part of the tradition then.
Yes.
So take us through the transition. And at some point, it ceased being like a professional organization and took on a different character.
Yes.
Do you remember how that evolved, or can you?
It was kind of gradual. I think people were thinking more in terms of union. Eventually, we did have a vote, okay? And the thing was, were we going to stay a professional organization, or were we going to become part of the New York State? In that case, it wasn't called United Teachers at that point, because we had not united with the NEA, okay? So we were then going to become unionized, officially. And I remember the vote, yes. Yeah, but that was, I had been there maybe 6, 7, 8 years. And you could see it coming. People were thinking more in terms of that.
But there was a lot of objection back then too, that it would be working class. You would.
Oh yes, a lot of people thought we were going to the longshoremen.
Yes.
That kind of a thing. A bunch of goons.
That the Teamsters would be.
Yes, you don't want to join those people. Yes. And it took a lot of checking on a lot of different things and talking to realize that there are unions which are not Teamsters. There are unions which are professional but still have a certain amount of union characteristics. But yeah, it was very controversial at first.
Do you remember, was it a close vote or was it an overwhelming majority? Do you remember?
I'm not sure at this
Okay.
point.
Because I don't remember either. Okay. Who was the first president after we became a union? Do you recall that?
I think it was Bob Farina.
Okay.
I'm not absolutely sure.
Yeah.
If it wasn't, I know he was
Yes.
pushing for it anyway.
Yes.
Before it happened, yeah.
Uh-huh. Now, at that point, were you a delegate? Were you
Yes.
for South?
Yes.
Building delegate?
Yes.
And what would your job have entailed? What would your responsibilities have entailed then?
Well, I was chief delegate also, so I was running the meetings, the announcements at the faculty meetings. If they needed any information or polls or anything from the teachers, I did a lot of that kind of thing at first.
And then what happened? At
Well,
first, you say you did that.
Well, I got a little more involved as she kept going. I became a NYSET delegate, and my first NYSET convention was the AFT and the merger with the NEA and NYSET and the whole thing together was interesting conventions I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
And where did
Of course,
that-
they disaffiliated eventually.
Yes.
It was
yes.
in the city. I think it was at the Hilton.
Do you remember anybody who was with you at that convention?
Marion Gray was there. Joe Gabino, he's also South Junior, was there. Jane Harris was there. I'm not sure if Shirley was there. Shirley was there later.
Shirley Hodges?
Yeah.
Yeah. Roy Horn just wrote a little piece in our most recent newsletter about the standing ovation that Brentwood received at that one of the first conventions, because we were only the second union on Long Island back at that point. I think Plainview Old Bethpage was another very active union on the island. But it was a very courageous move on the part of our leadership here, you and others, to have made that happen. Has your belief essentially in the union movement or in unions changed over the years? Do you have a different take on unionism today than you did then?
I don't think so. You know what I mean? I think it's kind of evolved a little bit, but I think basically it's pretty much the same.
Okay. Now, at a certain point, you taught and you did all of these things, both for the BTA and for kids and the district. And then at some point you decided it was time for you to accept the inevitable that all of us accept and to retire. And that happened in 1991, is that right?
That's right, yes.
Why did you retire, June?
It's a good question, because I had not thought about it. I was planning, because I left early, I think you know that.
No, I didn't.
Okay. I was planning on being there I want to say approximately 5 years. But then the state came down with this incentive, okay?
Was this the first incentive?
This was the first incentive. And it's the only time they said there was no age penalty to it. And of course you got the 3 years and everything else. And, my mother was ill. We had a lot of things were going on outside of school. And I said, maybe I will. Okay. Now, I first heard about this beginning of June. And I was thinking a little bit about it, and I had Dot work it out for me, financially.
Do the numbers, right.
Do the numbers. And I checked with some other people. And a lot of people said to me who were not eligible, I had that deal, I'd go. And I said, I don't know, I'm kind of involved in school, you know what I mean? And then what was happening is they were closing the center. And I was going to the high school.
This is the 10th grade center you're talking about?
This is the 10th grade center closing. And I had packed the boxes and everything. And all of a sudden I
let me
said
interrupt.
something.
This was the last
week.
No, but I mean, that was the last assignment that you had was at the 10th grade center.
Yeah, I was there from when it opened to when it closed, yes, which was about 10, 11 years. And I was thinking about it. I said, go up there. I'm in 3 different classrooms. It's this, it's that. And I said, I see people who maybe should have left earlier than they did. They stay, I think, a little too long. I'm enjoying the kids. I like what I'm doing. I don't want to stay until they get on my nerves. And I said, I'm going. And I decided on this on a Thursday. The last day of school was Friday. Yes. Wow. It was that fast, Yeah.
And that's irrevocable once it's
Yes. Yes.
in. Okay. Have you ever regretted?
No, I had some reservations at first. I said, what did I do? You know what I mean? Not the summer, okay? And
How old were you at that point then?
52.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were young to retire.
Yes, they've never done that again.
How were those next couple of years, though, afterward? Were you okay with that, at being 52 and no
well,
longer active?
I didn't think I was old. I didn't consider myself retired.
Yeah.
I said, well, I probably should be there. You know, I'm certainly young enough, so I'll just do my thing. I found out the home teaching later, and I did some traveling. I had a good time, you know.
Okay. So
I never considered myself old and retired, you know.
Yeah,
I said,
right.
no,
Right.
that's not the right age.
Just redirected a little
Yeah.
bit, that's all. Yeah.
Definitely.
Of all of the things that you did when you were actively engaged in the profession, is there something that gave you more pride than anything else? Something that you feel gave you a greater sense of accomplishment?
I think when I was senior class advisor and I worked with the officers, okay, and I saw them get their scholarships and I got letters from them at college and everything else, I think that did a lot for me. It really did.
What year would that have been, June?
Oh,
that you did that?
let's see. It would have been
Was that in the 70s or 80s?
around the late 70s, around
Late
80.
70s.
Yeah.
Was there one class that you had over all your years that stands out as being?
Well, I had them 10, 11, and 12.
Oh, okay. Was there one group then of kids that you
Yes,
followed that you were closer to than any other group before or after?
Well, it was them because I was on afternoon. I was on afternoon session, and they were in morning session.
Oh, that's when the high school was split into morning and afternoon.
Oh, yes. It was right at the end of the split. Yeah. Then I was transferred to the center.
By the way, those years we had 23,000 students in the district. Do you remember that?
I believe it. Yes.
Yeah.
I believe it, including Maslow Toffler.
That's right. The alternative school. Yes.
And everything else.
A lot of alternatives going on. And your last building assignment was teaching English in the 10th grade center.
Biology.
Oh, I'm sorry, teaching English. Your least favorite subject.
It was English.
No,
I'm sorry, John. I know you like English.
I meant to say biology. Yes, yes. What was the total number of years then that you put?
I had 30 years.
You did?
Yes.
And at that you left, and you were still a youngster.
Yes,
52,
yes. I started
53.
young, yes.
Over the years, June, did you ever have to do second jobs? Did you have anything outside of the classroom that you did? You said you were a waitress before you became a teacher.
I did that in college.
Did you ever do that again, or anything?
No,
like
I think
that?
I did it like the first summer or so. No, but
Yeah.
I taught summer school.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was going to college
Okay, so you did
at
summer
night, so I
school.
did that in the afternoon for a couple of years, and I did adult ed for a lot of years.
Oh, I
Like
see.
20, I think I retired from there.
Oh, you were one of those people.
Yes,
huh?
I was one of those people.
I
They waited for me to leave, yes.
never knew how you could do it. Work all day and then do the evening school and summer school. Oh, my goodness.
Well, when it was the afternoon session, it was easy.
She said.
Yes, but then you were back to the morning session. It was not so easy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you remember the year you began? Mike DeBellis interviewed you and you started your first assignment at South. Do you remember how much you made that first year?
$4,800.
Before taxes?
Oh, yes.
Not a great deal of money, although at the time
Yes.
it was okay.
Right. Now you pay that in taxes and more.
Now tell us a little bit about what life has been like since you retired. You mentioned you traveled. Where did you go?
Well, last summer I went to China for 3.5 weeks, and then I spent a week in Thailand, and a few days in Singapore, and another 3 days in Hong Kong. So I kind of did the Orient. And the year before I went to Australia. This summer, I think I'm in trouble. I was going to the Aegean Sea to see the eclipse on board ship. Okay, and then I was going to Turkey for a week. I don't think the trip is on. Okay, I know the Turkey part of it isn't. It's a little too politically active at the time. I'll
I
put
would
it that
say
way.
so. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll find something else to do.
What was your impression of China? I must ask you that because there are tremendous changes taking place.
They're very, very pro-American. Very pro-American.
Is
yes.
that among
very
the average person you're talking about? Or
yes. They're very
how
pro-American.
did you feel that? How did you sense that?
The way they talk to you, and
It wasn't just an act.
They
huh?
went out of their way. No, they really did. And I was in a lot of places that were not exactly tourist places too, which made me happy. We went up to Dazhou in the mountains, which is the closest place that they have the National Geographic, where they did the photographs of the very ancient temples and some of that. And the carvings are up there. And that road was only put through a month or two before. It used to be an all-day trip there and an all-day trip back. We managed to get most of it. The road was mostly done, so we got up there in about 5 or 6 hours. Spent a couple days and came back.
Sounds like they're encouraging tourism, and
they really want it. Yes, they're starting to do factories, as you know. A lot of things are from China, but what they don't have is heavy machinery. They're still on the roads with the pickaxe and the shovel and carrying the things across their shoulders. They don't have things like bulldozers and construction equipment. They really don't have. It's all hand done.
Well, they have lots of people.
Yes, and maybe they want it that way. The factories are open 24 hours a day, I was told. 4 shifts of 6 hours apiece. This is how they spread the work out to everybody.
First of all, it sounds like a fascinating trip. Were you ever worried about food and getting ill while you were away?
I had every shot imaginable before I left, okay?
Yes.
Everything, the hepatitis to medication for malaria, because we did go into that one place in the mountains, which is kind of out of the way. No, I really didn't worry.
Well,
I worry more in Mexico than I'd worry there.
Have you been to Mexico too? Has that been
yes.
one of the, you have?
Yes. I've been to a lot of places in South America. Yeah.
You like to travel then?
Absolutely.
And it sounds like you have a lot of places to go and a lot of places to see, and you're far from finished your travel days. You're going to be doing a lot.
No way close to finishing it. No way close.
That's wonderful.
I even made Tahiti a couple years ago, yes.
Wow. What else have you been doing with the time that you had since you've left the classroom now? Tell us about some of the other activities involved.
I was doing a lot with ceramics for a while. It's something I always wanted to do and never really had the time. So I really enjoy doing something like that. I really do. It's different.
Creatively making your own pieces you're talking about, or are you?
Both.
Both.
Mm-hmm. I started just painting the little things, because art is not fantastic to me. It's a little hard for me. But then I got the hang of it. Yeah. Now it's fine. It's just a different thing to do.
Are you a reader? Do you like to read?
Oh, I read all the time.
Do you?
All the time.
What kind of things do you prefer reading? What kind of books?
Oh, I read a lot of mysteries. I read a lot about other countries, history of other countries and that kind of thing also. And I think.
And then you go there.
Yes, and some of it's the other way around. It just sort of depends. But, yes, I do. I'm a big reader, yeah.
Could you, and I suspect then that you've read your share of books in your lifetime, is there one book that you can mention that you think had a profound effect upon you? Something that you remember as being an important book in your life?
I've read so many books, and a lot of them have had inputs. I would have a hard time picking one. Let's put it that way.
All right. Did you have heroes growing up, June? Were there people who you admired? Either, I would say, was there a woman that was a heroine or a hero to you, or did you have any figure that you?
A woman figure? Not particularly. No, no. Surprisingly, no.
Well, not necessarily surprising. I just, I would wonder whether kids today have heroes. I often haven't had a chance recently to ask anyone that. But, we're talking about, you and I are of the same generation that preceded this present generation of teachers. And there were baseball heroes and sports heroes that some folks had, What do you miss about, is there anything that you miss about active service that you're not enjoying now? For example, you said that you're doing home teaching, so you're still into part of
I
it.
miss the people. I miss a lot of the people. That's why I enjoy an opportunity to see them. You know, I still get invitations to the science department Christmas party and some of those things. You know what I mean? And so I get a chance to see as many as I can, or I see them outside of school. Yeah, I do miss the people.
Have you found yourself getting, at any point, overextended, over-involved, getting...
Oh, I've done that, yes. People think retirement, you do nothing. It's not true. Not true at all. I mean, I'm president of the Scuba Club. I do a lot of things with them. I mean, I was president of Suffolk County Science. I still run their awards dinner. You know, I'm pretty busy.
Where do you scuba dive when you dive?
Around here? Basically out east. The Hamptons, Montauk Point, Greenport. You can't dive in this area. It's 100% mud.
Have you ever explored any of the sunken
yes,
ships
I've
off?
done the San Diego and some of the other ones. That's a heavy cruiser, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And that's off the coast of Long Island, is it?
Yeah, it's off Fire Island, yes. A little closer to Freeport, that direction, yes.
Really?
Yeah.
You're a gutsy lady.
Yeah, I enjoy it, yes. It keeps me busy.
It's a peaceful world down there, they say. It's a different kind of experience, is it?
I find it very relaxing, yes. I mean, some people do it for thrills. I find it relaxing. I like to look around.
Have you ever encountered denizens of the deep while you were down there?
To tell you the truth, not really. When I first dove, I ran across some, not sharks, barracudas. Okay, I wasn't even sure what they were. It's a good thing I didn't know what they were. Okay, and that was off the Bahamas. Yes, but basically they don't go near you. They keep away. They're, you know. I've seen some interesting eels and odds and ends, and sharks in Tahiti and a few places, but they're afraid of you. They don't come to you. You know, they take a look and kind of keep back, and that's okay with me.
Yes.
More than okay with me.
Is there anything, June, that you would like to have accomplished that either you didn't have time to accomplish or weren't able to accomplish with your years? Now, either in the union or in the classroom, I'll ask you.
I think in the classroom I sort of did what I wanted, okay? I was happy in there. You know, I really was. And if I didn't, I would have been doing summer school and other things, you know what I mean?
Exactly right, sure. Makes sense to me.
No, I think it worked out okay. It really did.
If I were to ask you to give some advice based on your experience to the younger teachers, to the beginning people who are, as you well know, incredibly talented people who are in there today, what is there in the way of advice that you could offer people who are beginning their careers today?
Well, you're right about them being very well educated and very well talented. I think one of the things I would tell them is to remember they're people, okay? They're children. They're not perfect. You can't expect them to be perfect. You want them to be reasonable. And you may have to set some boundaries, okay, to help them be reasonable. But if you have respect for them, they'll respect you back, and you're not going to have a lot of trouble. That's what I give them for advice.
I'll bet you were a listener, too.
Yeah. They like to come and talk about problems and different things wrong. You'll find them after school. If you're that type of teacher, you can listen to them, yes.
Yeah. What frightens you?
Frightens me? About teaching?
About anything.
Well, I think what happened out in Colorado was frightening.
Yeah,
frightening.
We just had a tragedy in Littleton, Colorado this week, and I think we're still all reeling from that.
Oh, yes, everybody is. You know, every parent you see is, you know, very upset. Could it happen here? That would be very frightening. I know that incident at East Junior really was a problem here that time, you know. It wasn't half as bad.
Well, it was tragic, but the numbers were different. We were talking about, I don't know what the latest numbers are out in Littleton, 15, 16
Something
fatalities.
Like that, yes.
And I wonder whether it'll be in the headlines today, because it's now only 2 or 3 days. It probably will not last very much longer than this, and it will be out of our minds again. And then as you say, would be afraid of when the next time will be and where will it be. It happened in Brentwood in 1983.
Sounds right.
And, well, I wish there were a magic bullet, no pun intended, and a quick fix, but I don't know of it if there is. Is there a fix for that?
I don't think
for
so.
preventing that happening?
I don't think so. They had no idea this was coming.
This is a terrible way to end an interview. What else have we not talked about that we should have mentioned? There's got to be a funny story that you can tell us that we can end this on a bit of an up. The events have been so sad that I think all of us have been traumatized all over again because of our experience in Brentwood. Once again, June, we were the first. It happened here before it happened anywhere, and then the rest of the country began to have episodes, and the rest of the world began to have episodes. Tasmania and Scotland and Germany.
I think one of the differences was that happened has been children doing it, teenagers doing it. That's not the case in Brentwood. That was a sub. It was an adult. And I think that's a big difference. I don't think we ever thought in those times that children would do this. Now you say, I wonder if he's got a gun. That was an adult. That was a different situation. In my mind, it was very different.
Going to school for you and I was a very different experience than being a student today is for students.
Oh, yes. I didn't have the freedom that these students have. I'm sure you didn't either. You really didn't. Maybe the homework is the same. I don't know. But you went to class. You did this. You went to the library. The hallways were different. The cafeterias were different. I was allowed out of the building for lunch, which is different than here. But you always got back in time, that kind of thing. Of course, you had to walk in those days.
Freedom is a sort of a double-edged sword. It's wonderful on the one hand, but too much of it can be very scary.
True. You would never think about cutting a class. It didn't exist. You know what I mean? You really didn't.
The thought just occurs to me, other than working for Mike DeBellis, as the years went on, were there other administrators that you worked with that...
When I went to the high school, I worked for Stan Yankowski for a while.
Do you have a Stan story that you can share with us?
Not really.
Okay.
I only worked for Stan for a couple of years.
Okay.
I enjoyed Stan. He did some interesting things, let's put it that way.
Yes.
Especially his announcements in the morning. They were very interesting. And students found them very interesting too. They really did.
The microphone on his desk, and he would cozy into the microphone.
Yeah, that was him. He had to address the students. I mean, that is not done today, and it wasn't done, I don't think, before. You know what I mean? But he did. He was really involved with the students, and he really wanted to talk with them, and he did, and his door was always open to them, which, again, is a little bit different. You know what I mean? It really is. But he cared a lot about the kids, and he cared a lot about Brentwood. And then when I went down to the center, I worked for...
was that John that was there?
No, John came a couple of years later. In fact, Mike DeBellis was down there before John, right before he retired for about 3 years. And before that, the original person I worked for was Mike Welsh.
Oh.
When I first went down, it was Mike Welsh, yes, for 2 years or so. And then Mike DeBellis came. And then when he retired, John Galaris came.
Yes.
Then I left.
Yes. Well, your years in the classroom and your years in the organization have provided a tremendous example for others to follow. Your footsteps are big ones, June, and I can only thank you from the bottom of my heart for being with us today and talking. And I trust that others will enjoy watching this as much as I've enjoyed talking with you today.
And thank you. I enjoyed talking with you too.